everybody. My name is Mr. Dillman. This is Mr. Grove and Mr. Nagel. We're going to talk to you today about sustainability. And we have a few objects up here on the table. They're all drink containers, but they're all different. They all have something, special things about them. Can anybody tell me something about them? Which one of these drink containers do you think was the lowest cost?
Subway.
Subway? This one?
Yeah.
I think the plastic cup is the lowest cost out of the
I like the paper cup.
paper cup.
What's that?
It's the tiniest and it's made out of paper.
Mm-hmm. So you think the ones made out of paper are going to be cheaper than the ones made out of plastic?
Well, what is that one made out of at the left? Is that recycled?
This?
Yeah.
Recycled plastic? Recyclable plastic.
I'm going with that one then.
I think that one's
recycled
cheapest.
stuff's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
We're going Subway.
So, how about some other things about these? Which of these would be the most convenient for you to use, the best to use, most user-friendly drinking option? What do you think, Chris?
The Subway cup.
Subway cup?
What's that?
It's got a
It
straw.
has straw, and
Okay.
it probably holds the most.
Okay. John?
The travel mug, because it looks like it's insulated.
Okay. All right. So there's lots of questions that we could ask about these. What about which one of these do you think is best for the environment? Colin, what do you think?
The travel mug,
Travel mug? Why would you say that?
because it's reusable.
Reusable.
Recycled material.
Recycled materials. Okay.
Recyclable.
All right. So these are some things that we're going to dig into. The questions that we asked here are going to sound a little bit different to you after you hear what we have to say about sustainable design and about sustainability in general. So we've been throwing this word around a lot so far. What is sustainability? Mr. Naylor, you want to shed some light on that for us?
Sure. So, I guess one final thing out of what you guys just talked about with these cups. Was the first question you asked which one was best?
No.
No? Well, which one do you guys think is best out of those three or four questions that we just asked you? If you add that up, which of these four do you think is the best?
Red Bull can.
The Red Bull can? Why is the Red Bull can?
Because one
Gives you wings.
Why one
it's
was
recyclable.
Okay.
It's 1-to-1 when you recycle it.
Alright, okay, well, but like he said, we're gonna talk about sustainability. What you guys just kind of answered for us is some of the characteristics of these designs. So these are all containers for you to drink out of, and so the questions we just asked you were to highlight the specific things that make each one of these containers special within their design in order to hold liquid, right? So sustainable design is what we're going to talk about. We're going to figure out how we can create a sustainable design. So first we should look at what sustainability is. So sustainability means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And so that could even be ourselves. What that pretty much means is that we all have needs, we all have things that we need in order to survive, such as drinking water or getting food. And so the way that we go about getting that water or collecting that food, we need to do in such a way that in short term, next week we can go back and pick another grape or another strawberry. Or in a year, those strawberries are going to come back. We don't want to deplete the strawberries so that there's no strawberries for anyone to eat, or pollute our water so that we can't drink it. So the next thing is design. So what does design mean? Design is the realization and conceptualization of human needs and desires. So what do you guys think of that definition?
It's too big.
What do you think it means?
What does conceptualize mean?
What do you think the definition? Conceptualization. So conceptualization is essentially like, so you have an idea in your head, right, on something that you need, right? And so conceptualizing is taking that idea and trying to create some sort of, and trying to bring it into the real world, trying to make something out of that idea. And that's your concept of it, right? So, what else do you guys think about this?
Design,
Yeah.
how everything's made,
So how does it start though?
you have a need,
Right.
a desire.
Need or desire. So like one example could be, say, Mr. Grove here. He's just like us. He needs water. He can only survive 3 days or so without water. He needs water. He needs some way to get water, right? You can't always go down to like a river or a spring or a faucet to get water. You're not going to drink out of the faucet, right? So he needs some sort of container like this, right, to drink out of. And so differences in how they hold water, what they're made out of, is what we're going to look at. Next. So, and what is a sustainable design? Sustainable design requires the awareness of the short-term and the long-term consequences of any transformation of nature or environment, right? So, when we're designing something, we need to think about how it's going to affect the direct user, how it's going to, what we're going to do with it after we use it, where it's going to go. And so, the next line here is the environmentally sensitive and responsible expression of design, of realizing and creating something that meets a need, right? So we need to be thinking in our heads about what factors need to go into a design to make it good, in order not only for the appeal to us, like the social factor, whether we like it or not. Does it appeal to our wallets? Is it cheap? Is it too expensive? You know, that type of area. And does it harm the environment, or is it good for the environment? Does it give back? Can it decompose? And so, and you can see the 3 different categories I just talked to you about. And so, here's the next slide.
A good way to test this is to ask yourself, if we keep doing this the way we're doing it, can we do it forever? If the answer is no, or if you have to change the way you do it to make it so you can keep doing it that way, then it's not sustainable. You can make things more sustainable than they are currently. It's very difficult to get something to be completely sustainable so you can keep doing it the same way forever without exhausting any of your resources.
So those are the 3 factors that we have to think about when we're creating a design. We have to find a balanced solution to these 3 factors that they harmoniously just come together. And those are economy, the money, your wallet, nature, ecology, environment, where we get our resources, where the product goes to, and then equity, the quality of life. Does it improve our lives? Does it make it easier for us to drink? You know, this is the plastic cup here is a straw. Is that easier to drink than drinking out of the can? So we'll look deeper at each one of these factors. So ecology, everything that we need for our survival and well-being depends either directly or indirectly on nature, on the natural environment. And then economy, it requires money or some sort of capital to create any design. It's going to cost money to get resources. It's going to cost money to pay someone to think about a design or go through the process of designing something. And then equity is the social factor in this. This is where we come into it, where it affects the consumer. The quality, this is the quality of being fair and impartial. So does it help us? Does it hurt us? Do we like it? Do we dislike it? And how does that affect the design itself? And so all 3 of these factors, they come together And so right here we have this Venn diagram. It's a Euler diagram. And so there's three different relationships here, right? So there's a relationship between the environment and us. There's a relationship between the social and the economic, and the economic and the environment. And so we could have a solution that is environmentally friendly and costs us less. You know, that would be a viable solution. Or it could be the other way. It costs us more money, and the environment it hurts the environment more, or you know, that sort of thing. Or it could be bearable for us. It could be something where we can deal with, say, like an airport, their airplane routes. Say they make a lot of noise, so instead of having them fly over a city, they fly over a farmland or something where it's not going to hurt a lot of people. We can deal with that. That's bearable. And then equitable. So say that's your wallet talking to you. So say you have to buy one of these 4 products. You know, which one of these is going to be cheap enough for us and still serve the purpose that we need in order to get us some water. And then if we can get these 3 factors to balance and come together harmoniously, hopefully we'll be able to make a sustainable design and have something that'll really work for everyone, for the environment, for our wallets, and for us.
So this approach is called the triple bottom line. We're used to thinking about things as the bottom line. Our country functions that way. Everything is about that bottom line. At the end of the day, how much money did you make or lose? And so by looking at this diagram, you're in the complete bottom right-hand corner, purely economic when you think that way. And that's impossible to be sustainable if that's the only concern that you have. It absolutely has to be considered, but you also have to consider environmental impacts and social impacts of everything that we do, our choices as consumers and our choices as designers. So with all these choices, we're going to be looking at the triple bottom line and not just the bottom line.
All right, we're going to switch gears here a little bit, switching over to life cycles of these products. So let's start out with where these products actually came from. Can anybody tell me where this came from? Trees, right? And how long does it take a tree to grow? Years, right? A very long time before you can harvest it. All right, what about this can?
Metal.
So,
Box.
earth. Okay.
Recycled.
What about this?
Oil.
Atoms.
Dead
Oil,
plants.
petroleum,
Polymers.
polymers, right? But what's the base of a polymer? Petroleum, right? All right, and what about this?
Petroleum.
Platinum. Okay, one at a time. Somebody.
Petroleum.
Petroleum? Alright. Okay, my next question for you guys, alright, do you think that these were designed sustainably? Do you think that they took into account what actually matters when it comes to sustainably designing?
They want to make something that they can produce rapidly and make a lot of money off of.
Right? So that's not really
No.
taking into account the environmental aspects of it, is it?
Nope.
Alrighty. Which one of these has the longest life cycle? That's my next question for you guys.
Aluminum.
Yes. But what about plastic also?
It's not infinitely remeltable and.
It's true. Like Mr. Scott was saying earlier, it's a 1-to-1 return on these, right? You can make a can out of this on repeat forever. What about these plastic containers? This is a great example right here. You look at this container, it might be made out of something like this Subway container also. That's its next lifetime, if that's a nice way to put it. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about recycling and materials here. We already kind of touched on aluminum here. Nice thing about aluminum, but another downside to aluminum, is the fact that it takes a ton of energy to harvest what's the material called?
Oxide.
Oxide. And so you're going to have to take a lot of energy just to grab that, which is mostly in Africa is where a lot of bauxite comes from. Paper, if you think about paper, it's really easy to recycle, very easy to recycle. But I will get to this in a few minutes of some of the consequences of paper also. What about, we already just talked about this a little bit also, about recycling plastic into other plastic containers. But another bad downside of plastic, if any of you have ever taken a class on polymers, you'll never be able to create another container like this if you were to recycle this container. It'll never have the same value. You have to keep impregnating it with virgin types of plastics to make a product like this. So you have to keep on reintroducing new plastic to make something like this. All right, so we're going back to this diagram. We're going to start applying some of what we just talked about to the diagram. So paper, is this environmentally friendly for the most part?
No.
No, why?
Well, one, we're cutting down trees, and then two, to make paper, we're releasing lots of greenhouse gases.
What's so wrong with cutting down trees, though? Everybody cuts trees. Though. It's just a big part of our industry.
I don't see a problem with it.
It depends on the way you go with it, because
You don't plant
clear
trees.
cutting trees,
It's not sustainable if you don't protect the future of the tree.
Exactly. And if you think about a tree, it doesn't just grow annually. Sure, it's growing continuously, but it takes a very long time for it to be grown long enough and large enough to actually harvest and make paper products out of it.
We also need to think a little bit bigger than the tree, because, yeah, a tree can regrow, and a species of trees can regrow from just a few, but we need to look at where exactly are the trees coming from, and what other organisms in that area might be relying on that kind of tree. If you take that tree out of the picture, is some ecosystem across the world in someone else's backyard going to collapse?
Now let's look at the economics stance of this. Is this economically feasible to use paper products like this, a small little paper cup like this? Is it cheap? That's the real question. Yes.
Yeah.
Right, Eddie? All right, so it's a big economic, it's really weighted on the economic side, not so much the environmental side. And socially, do people like to use paper cups every day? The thing about Starbucks, you go to Starbucks, what are they made out of? The containers you're drinking out of.
Paper.
Exactly.
Maybe look at where those cups are made. Are they made in the United States where people have minimum wages and there's environmental regulations on companies manufacturing, or are they made overseas where people might not be paid fairly for their work, where greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants are not monitored or enforced at all?
All right, so now let's look at this aluminum can also. Let's apply the same standards. Environmentally, how we were talking about the 1-to-1 ratio, would you say that that's pretty well sustained right there?
Yes.
The only downside is when you're actually harvesting the bauxite, right? Because it's actually takes a lot of energy just to harvest it. But recycling makes it very environmentally friendly. Economically, would you say that's feasible for economics? Is it to our advantage to be using aluminum? Is it cheap for the most part when it comes to cans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about socially? Do you think this is good for society also? Do you think people like cracking open their favorite beverage out of a can? Do you think they mind that at all?
I prefer a bottle.
I prefer bottles too, but if you think about it, cans are a nice alternative also.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Would the class agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. So, last but not least, plastic. Let's apply some of these standards here also. What about environment with plastic? Is it good? Does it treat the environment nicely?
No.
No? Why not?
It'll
Is that
never biodegrade.
never biodegrade? What else about it?
It's made from a non-renewable resource.
The
Exactly.
toxins released in the process of making that.
Right.
It's also a non-naturally forming thing. It doesn't happen in nature.
Exactly. And it's not the 1-to-1 ratio like Mr. Scott was talking about.
You guys are asking the right kinds of questions about product life cycles. You're thinking about where is it coming from and where is it going when I'm done with it. And that's what we need to think about when we think about sustainability. It's not just the time we spend with a product, it's about where it comes from and where it's going.
Alrighty, so let's say that you're done using your little paper cup here, and you just got done with Starbucks, and you just got your whatever, you got like a mocha or a chai or whatever, and there's no recycling there. None at all, and you're just like, oh man, you know, this is pretty gross, I'm just gonna throw it out and actually make it into the trash can. But anyways, so you throw it out. What happens to it then? Does it go and be recycled?
Goes away.
Okay, where's away? That's my real question. Where is away?
Away from me.
Away from you.
Landfill. In a big mountain in the ground.
I got it. Now, landfill is actually, it's the scary part about it, is actually one of the best solutions we have for this right now compared to what I'm about to show you after this. Paper products in landfills take up about 15% of the landfill. That's astonishing, isn't it? Just to think that you could take that 15% away completely if you just recycled paper. But the problem is, people, when they're done with their Starbucks, throw it into the garbage because there isn't recycling right there.
So Blake, you made the point earlier that the plastic products are never going to biodegrade. Paper will under the right conditions, but if we look here at the percentage of those materials in the landfill, there's a higher percentage of paper than there is plastic. Part of that's because plastic is a newer technology than paper, but still, we're using more paper as a society, and paper in a landfill does not go away.
Now look at organics also. Can anybody tell me a simple solution so how we could cut out 23% of what is in our landfills?
Composting.
Composting, exactly. If you just have your own compost, instead of throwing your leftover food away into the garbage, you could actually be composting it in your backyard, making your own fertilizer you could be putting on your yard or your garden or whatever. That could take 23% of it. That is sustainability. And let's see, timbers. Let's talk a little about timber here. What's another simple solution for taking timber out of landfills?
Fireplace.
You could burn it, but what else could you do? Alrighty. So, here's another situation that's happening in our world, and it's not pretty. I'd much rather see a landfill, which I wouldn't want to see in the first place, but I'd much rather see that compared to this. What you see here are just giant piles of garbage that are building up in our oceans. And this isn't a joke, this is really happening. There's piles in the Atlantic and the Pacific, especially the Pacific though, because what's happening is people are just dumping their garbage into the oceans, and stuff this runs off from towns upriver, goes into the ocean, follows the currents around. What happens is it spirals around to the point, it comes to this meeting point right in the middle, and you're left with this giant pile of garbage right in the middle of the ocean. Can anybody see a problem with this?
Destroys our ecosystem.
Destroys our ecosystem, correct.
Sharks are gonna eat that, and they're gonna die.
Brings up the question, whose trash is it and who's responsible for that spinning pile of garbage out there? Who's responsible for that cleanup? What does the cleanup cost? We asked what these containers cost. What is the cost of cleaning up the containers? It might change the way we think about cost.
Alright, so now that we've talked a little bit about what's going on with recycling and things like that, let me ask you the same question again that we asked you at the beginning of this lesson. Which of these containers is best for the environment? Have you guys changed your stance on it? Which one do you think is best for the environment? Out of the four sitting in front of you.
Red Bull.
Red Bull? You say Red Bull?
Red Bull.
Anybody
Back
else?
that up. Why do you think Red Bull?
1-to-1, even though it takes extra energy. I mean, you also only have one use out of that can, whereas the other one
What about
multiple
this?
uses. But
Exactly.
that's also not naturally occurring.
You gotta weigh it though, because this you can
How many times do you
reuse.
refill that? And
Yes, you
drink
can
out of
reuse this over and over again, right guys? Alright. Which one of these products will be around the longest? It's kind of a trick question. If you think about it, this might be around almost as long as this. If it's in a landfill in, what?
that? Red Bull.
Red Bull?
Yeah, because it gets recycled and reused.
That's if it gets recycled though. It needs to be recycled in order to do that. But yes, that's going to be around a very long time also. These are all going to be around a very
You
long
meant
time.
if they all sit in one spot,
That's right.
out in the open in daylight.
If you were to put this in the middle of a landfill, sure it says it's biodegradable on it, but if you put it in the middle of a landfill where there's no oxygen getting to it, no sunlight and no water, it's not going to biodegrade, it's going to sit there, just like the plastic's going to sit there. And which one's the best? Again, that's a simple question. Which one do you think is the best?
Red Bull.
Why, why is Red Bull the best?
Because if you recycle it, it's 1-to-1.
If you recycle it. Alright.
Alright, so we know more now about product life cycles. We know generally where things come from before we use them, before they're manufactured. We know where things go when we're done with them. As we hinted at earlier, there's two ways to be sustainable. One of them is as consumers, by the choices that we make when we go to buy things. If we expect that a company is going to be equitable, economically advantageous and ecologically sustainable, we're expecting that from them, and with that demand, they will respond with more, better practices as a company. So a lot of it is consumer driven, but on the other side of that coin, we have the designers who are making these products. The designers who create every piece of technology that we use. So there's more to it than just, what materials are we going to use. That's a huge design consideration when you're talking about making any product, but there's more to it than that. Some of the comments so far talked about some of these being single use. So if we're looking at a product life cycle, yeah, this aluminum can be used indefinitely, again and again, as long as it's recycled. And if it's not recycled, it'll break down over the course of a few years, and it'll eventually biodegrade. But this Red Bull can, has a one-time use product life cycle. And in order to recycle it, it does take some energy to do that. And it's better than harvesting new bauxite and turning it into aluminum, but there's an energy cost that goes into recycling something. So these other single-use items are, it's something to be avoided. Some products are single-use products, but we have to ask ourselves as designers, how can we make these single-use products better? We have to build into them an end-of-life sort of idea where, is this designed to be recycled? Is this designed to be composted? If not, it's designed to be thrown away. So a good example of that would be the 5-cent deposits. You guys probably all take your cans back to the store and get your nickel a piece for them when you're done with them. But if you ever count the states on the top of the